IVF necessary for people who are not conceiving naturally?
The chance of pregnancy in one particular cycle is only about 14 to 15%. Even the educated people miss out on what is called the fertile period.
At what stage should they actually come and investigate it at least?
So you cannot increase the number of eggs that you have at any point in your life. Until today, she says, we never thought we will see this day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Womanary podcast. And today we're going to be discussing something that bothers every woman some or the other time in her life: pregnancy, IVF, egg reserve, freezing eggs, sperm, surrogacy, all of that. So, all in all, today we're going to be busting all myths, giving in proper, legit information. When should you get worried if you're not getting pregnant? What should you do? What about surrogacy? Who is IVF for? And how do you go about it? So I'm not going to be wasting more time of yours. Let's get straight into the conversation. How are you doing, Dr. Usha? It's so good to see you.
I'm good, Diksha. Thank you very much.
Okay. Firstly, we'll get started with this thing that a lot of people just get married, and immediately after 1 or 2 months, they say, oh, I'm not getting pregnant, let me go in for IVF. Okay, is that right? Do you think it's too soon? What's going wrong these days? Or it's just that the bubble word of IVF, so people feel it's an easy alternative? Like, what's it about?
No, you're right. I mean, they don't come for IVF exactly, people who get worried. But I do get a lot of patients who are married for a month or 2 months or 3 months, and then they come back and say, oh, I'm not getting pregnant, what do we do? Is there something wrong? Shall we investigate? And things like that. So generally, there is, it's science, okay? So if everything is perfectly working very well with the man and the woman, they're producing the eggs, the tubes are fine, they're producing the sperm, everything being 100% fine, the chance of pregnancy in one particular cycle is only about 14 to 15%.
Wow.
So it's very low. So
Sure.
you don't get if somebody gets pregnant in that first cycle, that's fine. But still the chances remain that it's only 14, 15% per cycle. So that is the reason we generally say when people get married or when they're trying for pregnancy, we say, okay, fine, wait for a year, which kind of makes this percentage become cumulative up till 100%. So somewhere along the line, that 14% will work for you in one of the cycles, and then you get pregnant. So ideally speaking, the textbook way of looking at fertility is if you're not married, if you're not pregnant after trying for about a year or so, then yes, we should be looking at, is there something wrong? There might not be, but it's important to look for it. But I do get quite a few patients who come before that. Let's say that maybe because people do tend to get married later, so they kind of get into this feeling worried that, oh my God, I've already got married late,
Yes.
and nothing is happening. Or maybe because they have their work pressures, usually men and women both are working, so they're looking at this pregnancy is something that you want to get it out of the way.
Correct.
So that's where the psychology comes from. So they come to me, and if I tell them, don't worry, just go try for a year and come back, they are not satisfied with that answer. Okay. So what will happen? They will end up going to another doctor, till they get kind of to the bottom of that.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So what I tell them is, yes, most likely there's nothing wrong with you. You kind of, wait for a year. But instead of me just saying it objectively, let me show it to you that nothing is wrong. So what I tend to do is take a good history about, whether the lady is having regular periods, which in itself denotes that most likely everything is fine. And then get an ultrasound done. If needed, if there are any issues, I would get a hormonal profile check and get a man's semen analysis done. So this is sort of the basic investigations, which is not very invasive, just a blood test and a semen analysis, which will give them at least some reassurance. Okay, fine, these are fine. I don't get into the details of getting the tube checked, all that. That becomes a little more invasive and unnecessary, really.
Sure.
So I get these done and then say, look, everything looks fine, so we shouldn't be really getting worked up about this. Give it a try for a year and then come back. So by doing this, there is a possibility sometimes, majority of the times it's fine to try for a year, but sometimes we might pick up something which is, there actually a problem there. And it would be unfair to tell a person after a year, then, oh my God, you've got this problem. And they say, I came to you last year. You told me everything was fine, go away. So I think partly just doing the check, it does reassure the patient, it reassures me. I feel better that I'm not just
Correct.
giving them just advice without
checking everything. At what stage should they actually come and investigate it at least? You think maybe 2 or 3 months into marriage they can come and just check if everything is okay, or wait for a year and then come and check?
It depends on what their mental status and what their
Right.
expectations are.
Yeah.
Yes. If everything is fine, they have age on their side and they're quite happy to wait, and they don't have any other problems like thyroid or weight issues or anything else, then yes, they can wait for a year. So if, for example, there is a couple who's married at 25 or less than 30,
Yeah.
they still have all the time in the world to get
Of
pregnant.
course,
So
of course.
there's no point rushing it. If somebody is getting married at the age of 35 and trying, they probably are like very stressed out waiting for a year. So maybe wait for 6 months or so. Just do the investigation. If that's fine, then wait for another 6 months.
Because,
And
see, I'm 34 and I was thinking, I was like, when, I get married, maybe I should really, get these tests done perhaps before I get married. That this is it. So what do you think about this flawed mentality of mine?
Well, there's nothing wrong in getting things checked before, but it has a lot of implications. So what are you going to do about it anyway if you're not married? Let's say now you find a problem.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do about it? You still don't have a partner.
Correct.
So
That is true.
and then the next whatever few years trying to find a partner, you're all the time worrying about, oh my God, I've got this. And there is also this psychological thing about if you know that you have a problem, then you get into this zone of guilt about, should I inform my partner
Correct.
or the future partner that this is going to be a problem? Or should I not? So if you don't inform it, you feel guilty that you're lying. If you inform it, there is a possibility that things will not work out with the person.
Of course.
Why get into the moral dilemma?
Correct.
Let it be.
Cross
Let
the
it
bridge
be.
when it comes.
Let it be.
Yeah, let it be. That's interesting. So tell me, doctor, is IVF necessary for people who are not conceiving naturally?
No. So first of all, when a patient comes to me, they're having problems with fertility. There is a lot of things nowadays about the lifestyle people are having as well. One is the weight issues,
Correct.
which affects the ovulation. And the second is the stress that they go through, work stress, lack of sleep, busy running around here and there. So people have to tend to, they need to find time and relax and do all those things. Second is the question of when they get stressed or two people are working, many times you won't believe it, even the educated people miss out on what is called the fertile period. It so happens that both of them are busy during the first fertile period and they're having sex at some other point of time
Correct.
during the month. And it can repeatedly happen without them actually realizing that it's happening.
Sure.
So the first thing I tell them about a healthy lifestyle, reducing stress, and then I talk to them about the fertile period. I just assume that even if they know all about it, nowadays, Google is there, more than Google, nowadays ChatGPT is there.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
And you won't believe it. I have young sons and I have niece and few cousins as well. They're all young. And sometimes they message me with these things about, Auntie, I did, or Mama, I'm doing this, is whatever. And I say, okay, do this. She said, but the ChatGPT said something else. I said, you have a doctor in the house. Stop asking ChatGPT
That is true.
about these things.
Correct.
ChatGPT might give you a certain information, but individualized information is going to be given by a doctor who's very close to you as well.
Sure.
So, despite all the knowledge that is available, you would be surprised to see many people are ignorant about the fertile period.
Correct.
So, just to clear that fertile period thing. Fertile period is where the ovulation is happening. So that's the mid-cycle, around 14th day. But you can't really catch the 14th day, and nature is not really stressing you out to catch it either. It's given the egg 48 hours to survive and the sperm 24 hours to survive. So anywhere in and around that period will work out very well. Generally, we say day 10 of your period, the first day you have your bleeding is the first day of your period, if you count. Day 10 to 17 is supposed to be the fertile period. Now, quite a few couples come, they've been trying and they're already stressed out and it's not happening. And I talk to them about fertile period. And soon after that, I tell them, you don't go around now pestering your husband every alternate day sex. For a woman, it's probably a little easier.
Correct.
But for a man, when you start saying you've got to do it now every other day
He
during
gets
this
all
week,
the more stressed.
and it doesn't happen. And even if it happens, probably the quality of the sperm and the egg probably they suffer as well. So I tell them, mark it on your calendar, day 10 to day 17. And just create this as not the sex week, but a romantic week. So try and spend more time, put your work aside that week, bring home less work, come home, have dinner, go out, chill out and let things happen naturally.
Yes.
So that will, over a period of time, that will facilitate getting pregnant. So this is something that I find with a lot of couples who are, especially in the modern era.
Correct. So for who is IVF necessary? Let's ask. कौन जाए IVF की तरफ?
Okay, fine. So they have to have certain problems. So for example, starting with a man, if the man is not producing an egg, a sperm, or if the sperm quality is not good, for example, the sperm is not moving, there are a lot of dead sperms, there are a lot of immotile sperms, those are the kind of people who will require IVF. Okay, IUI, IVF. So IVF is just a generalized term. So we call it the assisted reproductive techniques, ART. In that, IVF is one of the techniques. Then they have IUI and various other things. Okay. So if the sperm quality and number is bad, they would probably require IVF. The second is if there is a problem with the egg quality and the egg numbers. So those will also. So if you're having problems with ovulation, then you probably need to stimulate the ovaries and aspirate those eggs and then go for the IVF. And if somebody has a problem with the fallopian tubes, basically the fallopian tubes are blocked, the pathway for the sperm and the egg to meet is completely gone. The road is blocked, so you have to take a diversion. The diversion is IVF.
Interesting.
And it so happens sometimes everything is perfect. The woman is producing the eggs are fine, the man has got enough sperms, the tubes are patent, pregnancy not happening. Okay. Now, up till now in the science, we haven't actually found why this happens in these patients. And it's called unexplained infertility. So unexplained because we don't know what the reason is. There might be somewhere along microscopically something very minute that's happening. And these are the patients, if you've heard stories about, they were trying for, in the olden days, there was no IVF and things like that. They would try for a few years and then they give up thinking that it's not going to happen. And then after 10 years, suddenly they had a baby out of the blue. Okay, so it so happens. So these unexplained infertility patients many times may get pregnant.
Correct.
But if they've been trying for very long and nothing is happening, then we usually say go for IVF instead of trying on your own. It can happen, but it may not happen. And we don't know when it will happen, if it happens.
Sure.
So those are the patients.
Patients that should be. Great. Tell me a little bit more about this whole concept of egg freezing or, egg reserving these days. Yeah. I've been advised by a lot of people that, it's time, you go for this, etc. And I have had a friend who's gone, she traveled to India, got her eggs freezed, and I think it cost her about 200,000 rupees. But the thing is that she said it was very, very emotionally, challenging. And, obviously, your body undergoes through all of these issues. What is this whole concept about and who should get this done?
Okay. So egg freezing is an entirely different concept. Okay. What I want to talk about is the what we call about the egg reserve. So all of us are actually born with a certain number of eggs.
Correct.
So it's like you have got your ovary and the predetermined number of eggs are already packaged in that ovary and we are born. So you cannot increase the number of eggs that you have at any point in your life. It will only start declining because every month some eggs are, one of them will ovulate, the rest of them are spent trying to ovulate. So gradually your egg reserve starts coming down. So that is the reason people say that, you should get pregnant earlier, try at the age of 25, 30 or whatever. So as your age progresses, your egg reserve keeps coming down. But there is a very subtle difference here. The egg reserve for each person is very different. So it's different for you, it's different for me, it's different for another person. So what happens is somebody who's 45 might have a fantastic egg reserve. And somebody else at 25 might not have might not have that good an egg reserve. So when one of the things that you were asking me about, when do I advise these patients to go for IVF? Because I don't do IVF. I do all the preliminary investigations and whatever treatments we can do without the IVF. And once I reach a dead end, saying that, okay, fine, this is not working, then I tell the patients, okay, fine, you need to move on to IVF doctor. Okay.
Sure.
So one of the things that I investigate when I investigate for all these patients is an egg reserve. It's a very, very simple blood test. You get your blood test done. It doesn't tell you exact number of eggs, but it actually tells you whether your egg reserve is good or bad based on a certain number. Okay. Now, if I get a blood report saying that the egg reserve is not really so good and the patient is 25 or 28 or whatever, I tell her, look, don't waste your time trying to get pregnant on your own, trying this treatment. Because what happens is there is only over a period of 3 to 4 months, I can investigate a patient, give her medications, and wait for her to get pregnant. It does not happen, which means the treatments are not working for whatever reason. So if the patient has got a very low egg reserve, I tell her specifically, now don't go changing the doctor. Just because you didn't get pregnant with me, you go to another doctor. She will try the same thing again. She'll give you some other brand which is probably the same. You think that you're getting a different medication. Then you go to another doctor. So you kind of end up wasting your time. So I generally tell them, if your egg reserve is low, we've already tried. So it's up to you now. The only limiting factor is the finances. If you're because IVFs are very, very expensive.
Correct.
And they're expensive in India, they're expensive in UAE.
Everywhere.
They're triply expensive in UAE.
Correct.
So I tell them, if financially you're not bound and you're okay with the money, then go for the IVF. Don't waste your time trying to go from one person to the other, because by the time you end up in an IVF clinic in 2 years' time, your egg reserve might be so low that even IVF might not work.
Be able to. Okay. Correct.
And surprisingly, these days, I don't know the reason, we find quite a few women with low egg reserve.
My goodness.
I'm assuming that it's to do with either the air pollution or the food that we are eating,
yes.
and adulterated foods.
Sure.
I have no idea what's happening.
Sure.
You won't believe it. I did a charity camp in Chhattisgarh.
Right.
And I saw these are not even the modern women of, working society, or they're huge fat women. Nothing like that. They were just regular, it was in a rural area.
Yes.
You would assume that their fertility might be okay.
Of course, yes.
I saw about 80 patients. They were all fertility issues. I was like, where is this fertility thing coming up? So
that too
I
here,
think
yes.
there is something in
the environment
or the whatever we are eating,
Yes.
things like that.
Could
So
be.
that is reducing the egg reserve. So it's important, anybody who's thinking of pregnancy, thinking of future pregnancy, you want to postpone your pregnancy, especially postponing pregnancy, either married or unmarried. Do your egg reserve. If your egg reserve is good, don't worry about preserving your eggs. It probably will cost you so much money.
Correct.
And maybe repeat your egg reserve in the next few years if you want to. If your egg reserve is low, yes. If you have no plans to get married and have a child now, and if you're trying for some time, then go for the egg preservation or go for the IVF, whatever is suitable for you.
That's a very, very, very interesting thing you mentioned. Nobody really talks about egg reserve, the count being low, and so on. This is an eye opener for me also. So, it is amazing information. Now, let's talk about patients who don't have eggs and who don't have sperms. What's the solution for them? What do they do?
Okay, so we haven't reached in the science to an extent where we can actually make more eggs out of an ovary which doesn't have. We haven't reached a point where we can produce the sperms if they're not there.
Correct.
Okay. Or if they're weak. Yes, you can give a few medications which might change a few things. You can ask the person to change their lifestyle, which might improve the quality of the things. But you cannot increase the number of eggs or the sperms. That is, final.
Same. Understandable, yes.
There are treatments to increase the quality of the eggs and the quality of the sperms. They're all very ifs and buts, may not work. So when it comes to a point where somebody is trying for a long time, either they have no sperms or very low eggs, or the quality of the sperm or the egg is not very good, they're having miscarriages or not getting pregnant, the only option, unfortunately, is going for a sperm or egg donor. Now, it is a very sensitive topic when a fertility patient comes to me and they've been trying for a very long time. and you know in your heart that nothing is going to work for them, most likely. I mean, you can't say it's never going to work, but most likely this is not going to work. And they're going to spend the rest of their lives in the next 5 years spending money and time and effort and getting disappointed every time. That is the time when we as doctors should raise the idea of the egg or the sperm donor. Now, sperm donor is a little more sensitive because it is the man and the ego and all that. So that becomes very difficult. I have not seen anybody accepting a sperm donor thing. But egg donor, women at the end of the day want to bear a child. And they are happy to pay a little price of having somebody else's egg in their womb. I've had patients. I've had a patient who came to me who's 45 years old and had been trying for the last 20 years. Number of IVFs failed and everything. And she had multiple fibroids, very large fibroids. And she actually came to me to get the fibroids operated because she thought if she gets the fibroids removed, she'll get pregnant. And she had very large fibroids. I told her, look, your fibroids at some point will require removal if they cause you problems, even otherwise because they're quite big. But if you want me to remove the fibroids to get you pregnant, that's not going to happen because your egg quality and egg reserve is so low that whatever I do is not going to make you get pregnant. And you've already tried IVFs and everything. And she was like, I somehow have this feeling that I'm going to get pregnant with you. I've come with that belief. And just give me anything. It's okay. Just give me any prescription. So I was like, I gave her some prescription. It didn't happen. And she kept coming back to me. And then I really felt very bad. And I raised the topic of this egg donor. I said, look, you desperately want a child. And at 45, your chances are getting less and less. Try egg donor. And the immediate response was, no, doctor, sorry, we can't do that. I said, that's okay. It's my duty to explain. They came back another year and a half later. And they came back and they said, doctor, we've discussed among ourselves and with the family and everything. And we've come to a conclusion, we'll go for the donor. So guide us. So obviously it doesn't happen in the UAE. So I put them through to people my friends in India. And fortunately, she had the egg donor. She became pregnant with twins. And she came to me. I did her delivery as well. And she called me for the naming ceremony of the two children, which is there on my Instagram actually.
Wow.
And they were so happy, so happy. Until today, she says, we never thought we will see this day. So,
I agree.
Yes, if there is no egg or sperm, donor is
You have
the
donors.
only thing.
Donors are the only thing.
Yeah.
And let's now talk about, when we talk about donors anyway, let's talk about surrogacy.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, a very, very hot topic. And it's been there,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
a very long time. So let's talk about what is surrogacy, what all does it entail, what should you look for in a surrogate?
Yeah.
Tell us all about surrogacy.
So surrogacy is something that has received a very bad name because of the illegal practices that has been done surrounding the surrogacy part of it. Surrogacy is when, like as I said, if you don't have eggs or if you don't have ovaries, then you can't produce an egg. Then you have to take the egg from somebody else as an egg donor. So what if you have the ovaries, you're producing the eggs, for some reason you don't have a uterus? It could be a congenital problem, or it could be for some reason your uterus had to be removed. Okay, so then you cannot actually have the pregnancy grow within you. So which means you need a surrogate uterus, somebody else's uterus, to grow this pregnancy. So in this case, basically, it is your husband and the wife and the husband, they do the IVF. It is their baby, but the woman is not carrying that baby. She's letting somebody else carry that baby.
Yes.
Okay, third person. So now the laws regarding this, not all countries allow surrogacy. And I think in India also at the moment it's getting banned, or it's probably banned. I'm not very sure about that. The reason is when somebody else carries that baby, possibility one, the person might not want to give the baby. I think there was a movie also on that.
Yeah, there was a movie, yes.
So even if it's not your baby, you've carried it for 9 months. When you give birth to the baby,
you get attached.
You get attached, and it's very difficult to hand over that baby to somebody else.
Sure.
Obviously, when they do the surrogacy contract, they usually sign up on all these things, but that can happen. Two is the surrogate mothers are usually the mothers who are fertile, who are very socioeconomically in a backward class. They want to earn a little bit of money out of this, and they do that. But at the same time, they're going through a pregnancy. That pregnancy has effects on their body and health and everything. So if the surrogate mother is looked after very well and given all the medical care that is required, then that's probably fine to take the help of another person and pay her back in the money in the kind. But if the other person is not looked after very well, this is what happens in most of the situations. And the other person can die due to pregnancy complications, and they're left with weaker body and everything. then that becomes a little illegal. So if somebody is looking for surrogacy and opting for surrogacy, make sure that you take care of that lady who's giving you this boon of having your own child. You have to treat her like, treat her like a goddess, that she's helping you to have you make your dream come true.
Yes.
So that is where surrogacy is kind of received all kinds of bad news.
Of
And the governments are very, very strict on using women. It's almost like, it's almost like the prostitution.
Of course.
You use women for sex and don't treat them properly. So you
Correct.
use women for pregnancy and don't treat them well.
Properly, yes.
So it's unkind.
And a lot of times, I think even in this movie, it was shown that they're opting for surrogacy, and when they discover that the child is having some form of kind of deformity,
they don't
they
take
left
it. Yeah.
that lady.
Yeah.
So that also happens.
That also happens. And what does the lady do now with the child inside her?
Yeah.
So
There's a lot that goes.
So people who are opting for surrogacy have to be desperate enough to have that baby in whatever way.
Correct.
And they have to have certain moral and ethical boundaries there. They should not cross. That's very, very important. Yeah.
Correct. So, often, doctor, when I think this is obviously a very moral question. I think it comes, I usually have this, when people are not able to conceive and so on, having children, IVF, YEVO, egg donors, why not adopt?
It's a very nice question. I suppose because I will give you the medical or the non-judgmental part of it, and also the personal view about it, okay? For example, I would never be able to adopt. I mean, there's nothing right and wrong in that.
It's just a personal choice, yes.
It's just that I don't think I will feel the same kind of... Yeah, having said that, I have 2 dogs. I almost treat them like children. So if I can adopt 2 dogs and treat them like children, why shouldn't I be? Yes, maybe if I'm left with no option, I suppose I will go for it, because then you have to decide the choice between, would I want to stay alone in this world just with me and my husband, or do I want something to look forward to? Because children are your future.
Yes.
They give you the feeling of there's something to look forward
of course,
to. Okay.
Of course.
So yes, left in that situation, I probably will eventually accept that fact. But being now like this, I'm not very much into the adoption thing. The second thing is, the reason why I'm not so far for the adoption is, when my children are there, they're half of me. They're half genetically me, half only my husband's. I get to some points where I want to really kill them. Okay. Now,
of course.
Because there is going to be differences in the way they grow up, in spite of all that you do for them.
Of course.
And they kind of make you feel thankless sometimes and all that. And I tell them, मेरे खुद के बच्चे नहीं होते, जन्म नहीं दिया रहता, मैं गाड़ लेती तुम लोगों को. This is what I tell them sometimes. So can you imagine when you reach a point where you have the same fight or the differences with your child who's adopted?
Yes.
Will you not have that doubt? You're having this problem because this is not your genetically kind of a thing. So those kind of things can
moral
have
dilemmas can
yeah,
come
so
in,
you've got to be very, very sure of your intentions if you adopt. You don't want to make that child's life a mess.
Of course.
So yes, adopting is probably a very noble thought. If somebody doesn't have a child, instead of trying and wasting so much of money and IVF, yes, if you adopt a child very young. I have had friends who have adopted and they're very happy. And then comes the question of all that you see in the movies and everywhere. The adopted child later on gets to know that they are not the real parents. Sorry. And all those things. So it is not an easy journey.
Correct.
Although it is a noble thought, it's not an easy journey. So you've got to be very... childhood, the parenting itself is not an easy journey, even if it's your own child. So imagine if it's going to be another variable added to that. So it's going to be tough.
Of course. But I think also the beauty of it all is it ultimately depends on, what you are prepared for.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, and what your body is also prepared for and so on. So, because I'm really scared about all of these things. I have somehow, ever since I was young, I've always had this thought that I want to adopt one child. I want to, make one child's life good. So that's in me.
Yeah.
But I just hope I do find someone who has the same vision. But anyway.
Or you can foster 10 children.
I can foster. That is also another thing. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Dr. Usha. We had an amazing chat. And for everyone who wants any more details about egg reserve, fertility issues, and if you are someone who's wanting to conceive and not being able to do so, Please connect with Dr. Usha. She is going to be giving you expert advice, and please share this podcast with those who may need it. We'll see you very soon with another topic. Thank you so much, Doctor.